Hi, this is Billy Brown. I'm a nature writer with Grid Magazine and with phillynature.org. And today we're in Center City, Philadelphia, talking about bird window strike collisions. We're here with Stephen Maciejewski. Stephen's a volunteer with Bird Safe Philly. Stephen, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do looking for birds that have run into windows in Philadelphia?
Well, I started this last fall and I did it many years ago, and so I've started again now, and I started on the 15th of March and I'll be doing it until the end of May. So I get up around 4:30 every morning and I start my route in Center City around 5:30 and do it until 8 o'clock. And I just follow this route day by day and look if any birds have hit windows and collect them, tag them, bag them, and then turn them over to the Academy of Natural Sciences.
So why do you look for birds that have run into windows?
Well, this is a universal problem that birds do not see glass. They just see the reflection of trees or clouds, or they see light in the lit building and they want to go there, and they don't know that glass is hard. It's, like for people, it's like in a science fiction film where people trying to get into a place and there's a force field. Well, it's that way for birds. They don't know that glass is hard. They try to get in there and they could be going 30 miles an hour and kill themselves or injure themselves.
Yep. So we're doing this on a morning after a night when millions of birds were flying across North America. And so we have a lot of birds that live in Philadelphia year-round, but the birds that live in Philly year-round actually tend to learn about glass. They grow up with it. Maybe a few of them do die running into it, but the sparrows, the pigeons, the starlings around us right now, that you might even be hearing in the background or see fly behind us, those are birds that sort of grew up with glass and they know it much better. The birds that tend to run into glass a lot more are birds that are either migrating through or that are here seasonally. And so we have some birds that spend, let's say, their winters or summers with us and then go somewhere else for the rest of the year. So we have a lot of white-throated sparrows, for example. We found actually the head of a white-throated sparrow that was probably eaten by a falcon. And so white-throated sparrows are one of these birds that nests and breeds in the summer in Canada or in New England, basically up in colder places. And then in the winters, they come into Philadelphia. We also, sadly, we found something called a blue-headed vireo, one of my favorite birds. Blue-headed vireos are another bird that nests in these northern forests and in mountains. And then in this winter, they head south to Latin America, so basically Central America, to spend their winters. And then in the spring, they're flying back up north again. And again, this should be obvious, in the fall they head back south. And so, like a lot of birds that do this, they follow something called the Atlantic Flyway. One way to think of it is that birds like to follow water when they're heading north and south, or to follow the edge of a coastline. And so the Atlantic seaboard is just such a route. And Philadelphia sits essentially in the middle of this bird superhighway. And so you have a lot of these birds that are flying, and they tend to fly at night, or at least a lot of the smaller ones do. And so they'll be flying, maybe a couple hundred miles a night. And then in the morning, they want to set down, rest for the day, maybe for a few days, eat some bugs to sort of refuel for the rest of their journey or for the next leg of their journey. And so these are the birds that when they end up in a place with a lot of glass, they've never seen glass before, they don't understand glass. And so a lot of times they're what we find, what Stephen in particular finds, dead, having flown into the windows. And so sometimes the birds that Stephen finds, or you might find yourself when you're walking around the city, around where you live, sometimes the birds are dead because they've hit hard enough to die, sort of as you might if you're running into something really fast head on. But sometimes they're stunned. And we found a black and white warbler, which is another one of these birds that winters to the south. Some of them do stay in Philadelphia, the Philly area, some head further north. So what do you do when you find one that's stunned?
Well, if we find it on the sidewalk, we like to pick it up and put it in the garden area somewhere where it's going to be protected. People aren't going to walk on it. The problem when we find them on the pavement is that workers are going to their job with a cup of coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other hand, and they could walk on the bird. So we just want to move it in a more protected area. Ideally, we would like to take it to rehab, and so they could watch it and help it return to its normal self.
Yeah, and I forgot one bird that we had seen already. Also, we saw a common yellowthroat, which is another warbler species. they are one of these birds. They do nest in Philadelphia and also to the north of Philadelphia, but they do winter in I think the Gulf into Latin America. It's a bird that eats a lot of bugs, and so it has to leave in the winter when we don't have any bugs. And so that's a really, any bird dying unnecessarily like this is sad, but when they're just really beautiful birds like this, it's extra heartbreaking. I want to mention that this is a problem that we all can do something about. Stephen was actually instrumental in kicking off a citywide initiative to turn down lights on buildings at night. And so you might think, what do lights have to do with this? But birds that are migrating at night use natural light to help them navigate. So they're using the stars, they're using the moon. And so when you have a city lit up at night, that can really confuse them. It's going to pull them into the city at night. And so we had a night that, called perfect or awful for this last fall, when we had sort of low cloud ceiling and a heavy migration night. And so, Stephen, you came out and what did you find?
Yeah, that was Friday, October 2nd. I'll never forget that day. It seemed like it started off as a normal day. I was finding a few birds, and then I was finding more and more. And as I was picking up and bagging the dead birds, people would tell me there are more birds around the building on the other side. So there were so many, I ran out of plastic bags. Someone dumped a dustpan of 75 birds in front of me, living in dead birds. And we even got on some rooftops of buildings and we found hundreds of birds. It's really a catastrophic day in Philadelphia.
And so what good came of it is that Stephen's documentation of this sort of got a whole lot of local organizations, building owners, even the city sort of mobilized on this. And so now we've got an initiative to help turn down the lights in Philadelphia at night. Something started up called Bird Safe Philly, so you can check out birdsafephilly.org and learn more about the problem, solutions, how you can get involved looking for dead birds yourself and documenting the problem to help figure out more solutions. And then I want to say that we're in Center City. We've got these big buildings all around us that kill dozens of birds or hundreds of birds a year. But when you add up all the smaller windows on houses and smaller buildings around the country, really the big totals come when you add up those ones and twos on a given house or someone's backyard. So you can take steps to make your windows more visible to birds. American Bird Conservancy is a great organization. They've got a lot of great resources on how to bird-proof your windows. While we're talking about it, I always like to mention a couple other things people can do to help keep birds safe when they're in Philadelphia. I always say plant a lot of native plants because our native bugs like to eat our native plants, and those bugs are fuel for birds that are stopping here on migration. The last thing I always say is keep your cats inside, especially during migration season. Stephen's a cat person, I know. We were just talking about
I keep my cats indoors, never let them out.
Right, and so it's safer for the cats, but also all these birds that are coming through, it's safer for them too. So again, check out Bird Safe Philly, check out American Bird Conservancy, check out your local Audubon chapter, a lot of great groups, Delaware Valley Ornithological Club. And if you want to go on a walk and see some live birds, want to end on a happy note, Bird Philly is a great operation. A lot of walks around Philadelphia where you can get to know our local birds alive and really grow to love them that way and be inspired for conservation. So I want to thank Stephen for letting us tag along with him today. I want to thank Bird Safe Philly for all the work that they're doing. I got to thank Grid Magazine for partnering with phillynature.org. phillynature.org is a website where you can learn a lot more about nature in Philadelphia. If you like that, you like this kind of content, please consider leaving us a donation. And then, of course, subscribe to Grid Magazine and support environmental journalism right here in Philadelphia. Thanks.
Thank you.